Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bree, and today's video is going to be a reading wrap up. And if you want to grab yourself a nice cup of tea, I am drinking a cold tea in a mug, so you don't have to get a hot one. And I am wearing a blanket in the middle of summer, but it's all for the cozy vibes, you know? I am thinking this wrap up I'm going to do slightly differently. I've been feeling out of it since my wedding. It was on the 28th, and so for like the 24th until the 1st, I didn't read anything, and I just was in like wedding mode. And now that it's over, I'm just trying to get back to things. I was completely depleted the week after the wedding, and now I'm just like feeling like myself again. So I decided to sit down and make this video, and I thought, why don't we do it a little differently? Usually I just kind of give an overview of all the books I read, but I was thinking I would include my stats this time. I think that those can be fun to see. I always like when I see other people's stats, but I also want to keep in mind that like these really don't mean a lot, because I think if you even read one book, if you like to read, that's a win in my book. And even if you are in a reading slump and you don't even read a book this month, that does not mean you're not a reader. So with that being said, I just thought it'd be fun to look into what my stats are. I'm going to have my laptop over here, so if I look over here, that's what I'm looking at. And yeah, I think let's just get into the video. So I think I'm just going to kind of read through. I have a Google Doc here that I didn't create. I got it from, I'll have to put her handle up here. I can't remember. I watched her channel a couple times and I saw she did like a really in-depth video about how she made this book tracker, and it had everything I really wanted to track in there in such a nice way that I never was able to do. I'd used Excel before, but she really went above and beyond. So I'll link that down below. So if you want to download that, it's free, and she just does an amazing job. And I think she does have, if you can donate like a little bit to her, but otherwise she also offers it for free. But I'll link that down below because it's really the best reading spreadsheet I've ever used, and I can get it right on my phone and just plug everything in, and it generates all the stats for me. So that's where I'm getting this from. But I'm just going to go through like kind of, I have a section of where I just like go through like pages read, number of books, hours listened, those kind of things. So I'll list that off here, and then we'll get more into like the deep dive of things. So I read 10 books this month, which is actually the highest I've read in the month, but I did read a lot of manga and graphic novels. They're kind of like comic volumes, if you will, but I was just having a great time with them. So that is probably why I was reading more than normal. For pages read, I only read 1,845, and I average around the 2,500 mark. So for the previous 3 months, I read 2,600, 2,100, 2,700. So you can see that's a little lower than my normal. That's probably because of all the manga. It's a lot shorter. I listened to 5.5 hours of audiobook, which was the entire Curse the Day book. I normally do not read by listening to audiobook because I just don't process. I have some auditory processing issues sometimes, and so it's really hard for me. If I'm doing anything other than listening, I struggle to hear it. But I was driving back from my bachelorette with my sister, and she had some work to do, and so while I was driving, I just put it in so that I wouldn't get tired and I'd have something to listen to, and that actually helped me because we were just on long stretches of straight driving. And so I listened to nearly the whole book, and then I listened to the last 15 minutes when I got home, and I just sat there and like listened to it through one day, and I think that's actually in a reading blog, but I really enjoyed it, and I would do audiobooks like that again. I just don't tend to take long trips, but that driving was a good way. And I used to sometimes listen in the car, but sometimes I can listen in the car and sometimes I can't. So this was just a good month for it. And my average rating was 3.9 stars, which is pretty good. I have been averaging around the 4-point range. And so this is like a little low for me, but I tend to rate things, a lot of books, like 3 to 4. I tend to not have like a ton of lower ratings because I think I just don't like being mean to the books. So, and not that I dislike books but give them a higher rating. It's just like I think I view 1 as like worst book ever, and then 2 is like wouldn't recommend. And 3 is just like, oh, it was good, but not my favorite. And or like, it was okay, or it was good, but not my favorite. 4 is like, yeah, this was pretty good, but I have like tiny issues with it. And then 5 is like favorites. So if you're wondering how I read things, I'm really deep diving today. I acquired 7 books. So, you know, book buying problem is still there. I'm trying to get better about it, but I also know that going to like Half Price Books brings me a lot of joy, and it's actually a place that calms me down. So I'll go sometimes during the week when no one's really there and just peruse. And so that is something that I really enjoy. And I also like going to like thrifting, like Goodwill and stuff. So it's just not something I'm going to stop. Library books, for some reason it says 0, but that's wrong because, oh, I bet it's because I got them in April. So I had 8 library books in April that I got, and I ended up reading, let's see, how many did I actually end up reading from the library? I read 8 books from the library. So I read basically all that I got in that time frame, but for some reason it just doesn't show up in my May because of when I acquired them. And then rereads, I had 0. I don't tend to reread. The only book I reread a lot of is Howl's Moving Castle, which I reread like every year or two. Not every year necessarily, but probably like every 2 years. But I'm just not a big rereader because I think there's always books I'm wanting to read. Where my husband, which is the first time I'm saying that, that's weird. He likes to reread books a lot because that brings him comfort. And for me, I just tend to read new books all the time. And then Own Voices, I put 0. I did not read a ton of realistic books, if you will. Like a lot of historical fiction, again, manga or graphic novel, and yeah, a lot of historical fiction. So it wasn't really a opportunity to read in Own Voices. Let's see. Let me go into the breakdown of genres now. So I read 5 graphic novels, which for some reason I shelved that under manga. I think it's because she doesn't have a manga like option. So within that, one of those was a manga. I keep saying I read a lot of manga, but I actually read a lot of the graphic novels. So 5 graphic novels / some manga in there, and 4 mysteries and a thriller. So yeah, that's pretty par for the course. Sometimes I read a middle grade and sometimes I read a fantasy, but I haven't been in the fantasy mood for a long time. And this isn't including like subgenres, so like historical is a genre, but I read mystery that was historical, so I shelve it as mystery first, then historical. That's just the way I do it. So yeah. Formats, I read 1 audiobook, which is a first for me because in all the other months I have 0. I read 1 ebook. I read ebooks sometimes, but not a lot. And then I read 8 physical books. My audience, I read 5 adults and 4 middle grade. Yeah, that makes sense. And 1 YA. And out of the authors, 6 authors I read before and 4 were new to me. Now it says 6 authors, but that's going by book. So one of them was the same authors over and over again. So that's where you're getting that. I had 1 2.5 star, 3 3 stars, 1 4 star, 3 4.5 stars, and 2 5 stars. Those are my reading stats. Let me just list all the books I read, and then I will go through and talk about my favorite ones and my least favorite ones, and we'll leave it at that instead of going through each book individually. So the first 2 books I read, I don't have a copy of because they were both library books, but it was the first and second in the Lily Adler series, and that is The Body in the Garden and Silence in the Library. Then I read, which I have only, this is the first volume. I rented the rest from the library. And so I read volumes 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that was that was Friendship to the Max, A Terrible Plan, Out of Time, Band Together. So I read these. The second volume I read on ebook, which is where that ebook came in. So the next book I read was Tea for 3. No. So the next book I read was Shades of Earl Grey. This is a bind-up of 3 books. I read the last book in the Tea Shop Mystery series. I read this when I was in Charleston, and this takes place in Charleston, and then I finished it when I got back. And then after that, I read The Bone Garden by Tess Juriston, and this I owned already. I also listened to Curse the Day on the drive home from Charleston, and then I read Yona the Dawn Yona the Dawn Volume 1. And this is by Mizu Kusanagi. And I really enjoyed it. So I thought I read more manga, but I guess this is the only one, and the other ones are graphic novels. So I think my favorites of the month, or like the ones that I remember the most and take away from the most, are probably the Lumberjanes. I just find this, I guess, would you call this a comic series or graphic novels? But they're volumes, and I just really enjoy it. Specifically, I really enjoyed the fourth one, Out of Time, and I really enjoyed A Terrible Plan. So the third and fourth one, because I think it got more into like the bigger thing that's happening at this camp. But this is about a bunch of Lumberjanes. They go to this camp, and the camp is like Lumberjanes, so it's kind of like Girl Scouts, but way cooler. And while they're there, they just keep getting into shenanigans. There's like Yetis and random creatures that just keep like attacking, and they keep being in the middle of it, and they don't know why, but they also are earning like badges and stuff. Like the director is kind of quirky, and like she's like doesn't really give them any clues as to what's going on. But their camp counselor is just the greatest, and is just like does not want to be in this mess of things going on, but is always wrapped up in it too. And I just think it's like a really fun story. They all have their like strengths, and they also all like just get along with each other and have their banter, but they each know like what the other one has to offer the group as a whole, and just like, yeah, or accepting of each other is what I'm trying to say. And so yeah, I really have fun with these. I'm definitely going to continue on with this. I just love it. I think it's a great, fun, like middle grade graphic novel about, girl power. And they're all just such unique personalities and like really a diverse spectrum of characters, which I love. So if you're looking for a graphic novel, middle grade, that has like a diverse range of characters, I would pick this up. They also meet up with the boys group too. That is like, I forget what they're called, but I love the guys that they meet up with too. So then my other like one that I am really liking is Yona of the Dawn. I am really into manga, if you didn't know that right now. I've read only this and Witch Hat Atelier, but I really love both of them. So I'm excited. This is volume 2, by the way. I don't know if I said that. I don't have volume 1 because I returned it to the library, so I've been showing you volume 2. But I already have volume 2 and 3 to pick up to read this week. So this is about a princess who has a bodyguard named Hawk, and there is also another like prince. I'm not exactly sure his relation. I'm a little confused about that, but they're all at the castle, and a event occurs that causes the princess and Hawk to have to flee the castle and go on the run. And so that's literally all I know. I don't know the bigger plot, but I've heard it's a really good coming of age story. I've heard Hannah from A Clockwork Reader really loves this series, and she is much more of a manga reader than I am. And it's just like, I've heard a really good coming of age like story and really good character development. So I'm really excited to see where this goes. But I really loved the first one. I gave it 4.5 stars. I only gave it 4.5 instead of 5 because the beginning was a little confusing for me. But after that, I caught on, and I'm hoping the rest of the series is 5 stars for me. Now, let's talk disappointments. So disappointments for me was the third book in the Tea Shop Mystery series. I ended up giving this 2.5 stars, Shades of Earl Grey. This is about, the series as a whole is about a tea shop owner, Theodosia, and she has a like tea master who works for her, and then a younger girl who is like still in college but's figuring stuff out, but she's like the baker in this tea shop, and they get wrapped up in a mystery in the first one where someone is poisoned at an event where they were serving tea, and so they're trying to clear their name, and then the series goes on and she's solving mysteries. I just wanted more from the third one. The third one was a little more like heisty type book, and I just didn't like it as much. But also, I think that she just didn't pull me in like the first two. I usually give them about 3 stars anyway. They're like just fun, cozy reads. But for some reason, I just really found this one lacking. And there were certain descriptions of people in here that I just didn't love as much. Like, that I just felt like she could have left out. And I also know that even though it's a cozy mystery, I just wish there was a little bit more like history there, because they're in Charleston, which has a lot of history in the Civil War and in slavery and all these things as a southern city. I guess Charleston is a city, but you know what I mean. And they talk a lot about the history in here because she's in the historic district. She works with someone who is a historian, but they never touch on like really those things. They never touch on slavery or things like that. And I was hoping after like the first two, maybe that would start to be a conversation. And this one dealt a lot with like historical objects and stuff, and there was like really not a lot of inclusion in that. And so that's where I'm disappointed. I just want more from the story. But this was also written a while ago, so I don't know if it was written now, if maybe some of that would be included. But those are my thoughts. I just wish it had a little more. I still have more of the series, so I am going to continue on because I don't hate the series. I find the characters endearing. There's just like some gripes I have with it. I would say this one was just like not as much a disappointment as just like a learning opportunity for me. So I've read Karen Slaughter recently, Pretty Girls, and while I think that the mystery itself was really well done, like the twists and turns, like objectively it's really good, I really struggled with how dark it was. And this is the same. Well, this is similar in that it's very, very dark. I didn't realize it's a medical suspense, and I didn't realize like how in-depth it was going to be, especially it's a lot about women's bodies and pregnancy. So if you're sensitive to that, I would not pick this up. It's very detailed, and it's a historical mystery thriller, so I thought I would like it. But I think anything like medical suspense, if it's really going to get like gruesome or like violence against women, I just don't care to read. I can read like kind of creepier things if it's like a haunted house or something like that, but I think just these kind of topics about, again, violence against women or super medical like stuff, like this talks in depth about autopsies, and I've read autopsy stuff before and it hasn't grossed me out, but this just like was more disturbing. So I think I need to kind of not read as many like disturbing books and stick to more the mystery and lighter like thriller genre, because I think that's more up my alley. And then maybe once in a while I'll read these, but it has taught me that I think that I can look at some of the books I have on my shelf and maybe rethink if I actually want to read those. But outside of that, also there was a dual timeline in here, 1830 Boston and then present day, which is supposed to be like 2007 or something, because this is like written a while ago. And I felt like the present day timeline could have been taken out completely. Like it really didn't add anything to the story for me, so that was disappointing. I could have just stayed entirely in the 1830. And I also think the way the mystery ended, it just wasn't as like, it didn't pack as much of a punch as the rest of the book, because the rest of the book is so like kind of disturbing and detailed, and then the ending was just kind of lackluster for me. So that is another disappointing book for me. So that's all the books I read. I am going to leave it here. Let me know if you like this new format down below. I'm seeing like Meg with Books do this kind of wrap-up style, and I really like watching it. So if you like this kind of style, please let me know down below what you prefer, because I am always willing to try new things. And yeah, I hope you have a great day, and if you haven't subscribed, if you want to subscribe and like the video, that really helped me out. And yeah, I will see you next time.